Hi everyone, my name is Wali Rahman and I'm a diversity and inclusion specialist. Now my job includes promoting diversity and making sure that staff within the workplace feel a sense of belonging, are respected for their differences and can bring their best selves to work each and every day without worrying about being bullied, harassed or treated unfairly. Now you might wonder, why would people be treated unfairly in the workplace? And why do we need to promote diversity and inclusion? Unfortunately, there are many reasons why we need to do this, as when we look around us in society as a whole and in the workplace and school, we often see that everyone is not treated equally or fairly, and discrimination does still exist and it affects people in different ways. Now, recent surveys reveal that 60% of black people and 42% of Asian people experience racism at work. Another recent study by the Guardian newspaper revealed that 70% of black school pupils feel under pressure over afro hair, 95% hear racist language at school, and at least 50% of black pupils think racism is the biggest barrier to their achievement at school. So what do the words diversity and inclusion mean? So diversity is the mix of people you have within society or within your school or workplace in terms of age, sex, ethnicity, religion, disability, sexual orientation, education and so on. Now inclusion, on the other hand, is ensuring that everyone with those differences feels included. They feel like they belong, have a voice, are valued and can be their best selves every day, regardless of their different characteristics and backgrounds. So it must be emphasised that when we talk about inclusion, we are talking about every single person and not just people who are from minority groups. Each and every one of us is unique and different in our own way and deserves to feel included. First of all, let's have a look at some statistics to understand how diverse our country is. Now, according to the 2011 census, out of over 66 million people within the UK, 50.7% were female and 49.3% were male at birth. 13 million people have a disability. That's 1 in every 5 people. 6% of the population are gay, lesbian or bisexual, although around 34% of all people did not wish to tell anyone their sexual orientation, so that number could be a lot higher. 87% of the population are white, and 3% are black, 2% are mixed race, and 7% are Asian. That makes the non-white population around 13% of the overall population. So we are a diverse country, made up of people from all different backgrounds. So it's important that we all understand and respect each other, because at the end of the day, none of us had a choice as to the circumstances into which we were born. Interesting fact for you. Did you know that the DNA of all human beings is 99.9% identical? So this means that there is no scientific basis for different races, so we are all one human race. However, despite this scientific fact, we know that racism still exists, as does sexism, ableism, homophobia, ageism and so on. We all know what happened in 2020 to George Floyd, a black man murdered by a US police officer in broad daylight in front of cameras, simply for no other reason except for the colour of his skin. He was not the first black person to be killed unjustly by the police, nor was he the last, sadly. Some of the countless black people killed by US police officers include Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, and many others. However, it took the murder of George Floyd for people all over the world black and white, to stand up and say enough is enough as they carried out protests that summer led by the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, the Black Lives Matter movement is a social movement that seeks to fight against the racism and injustices experienced by black people, and it first began in 2013 after the racially motivated murder of Trayvon Martin, whose killer, George Zimmerman, was found not guilty. So saying Black Lives Matter is not a political statement, just as taking the knee in solidarity with black people, as many footballers, for example, do before any Premier League matches. That is not political either. It does not mean that all lives don't matter, because we all know that they do, and that would be pointing out the obvious. It is simply highlighting that if we look around us, we can clearly see that for many people in society, including those who are supposed to protect us, that black lives really do not seem to matter, and we need to reaffirm this and repeat it until we see some real change in society. Only a year after the murder of George Floyd, we saw in our own country the ugliness of racism yet again after the Euro 2020 football final, when our own black players suffered racist abuse after England's loss to Italy in the final. Also in 2021, we saw the murder of Sarah Everard at the hands of a British police officer, which sparked a movement with millions of people protesting violence against women. Again, Sarah Everard was not the first or the last woman to suffer violence or be murdered by a man. Other women who were murdered by men around the same time include Sabina Nessa, Biba Henry, Nicole Smallman, and many others. Now, what happened to these and countless women is at the worst, most horrifying end of the scale. It should go without saying that women have as much right as men to be in public spaces, doing what they want, wearing what they want, being however they want. And yet, they always have to worry about where they're going and how they get there, what they look like, and so on. As men, we can never really understand this, nor understand what a frustration it is, what an absolute pain in the neck it must be to always be on alert. But most of us, if not all of us, have women in our lives, whether it be our mothers, daughters, sisters, partners, friends, and so on. So imagine if anything like this were to happen to any of them. So it's so important for us to respect all women regardless and watch how we treat them, whether it's online on social media or face-to-face in public. It is also our responsibility to speak out against our friends if we see them mistreating any girl or woman or talking to them in a way that the girl or woman in question is not comfortable with, or which can be deemed as harassment. Did you know that 97% of all women aged 18 to 24 in the UK have been sexually harassed, and 96% of those women did not report it as they didn't believe that any action would be taken? Violence against women and girls includes a variety of crimes such as domestic abuse, harassment, and domestic homicide or murder. It's hard to understand or empathise with people if we have not experienced the discrimination they face on a daily basis because of their sex, the colour of their skin, their religion, or their sexual orientation, and so on. Therefore, we must recognise our privilege if we are not in a minority group and understand that we have the power to help those groups as an ally. So what is privilege and what is an ally, you may ask? Privilege is about the absence of any inconvenience or an impediment or a challenge. As such, when you have privilege, you don't really notice it. But when it's absent, when you don't have it, it affects everything you do. Just ask any person of colour, any woman or girl, any disabled person, and so on. An ally is someone who recognises their own privilege and helps and supports other people who are part of a group that is treated badly or unfairly in society, although they are not themselves a member of that particular group. To be an ally, you must speak out against injustices, whether it is when someone calls someone a name, behaves inappropriately towards them, abuses them, whether that's online or in person, and so on. You must also be aware of your own language, your behaviour, and your own biases. Now, in terms of language, we must watch what we say and understand the impact of our words on the mental health and well-being of others. Sometimes you might say a word which is meaningless to you and which comes out of your mouth really easily without you sparing a thought, but that word will scar the other person for life in some cases, and even cause them to commit suicide in some extreme cases. When it comes to talking about race, for example, it's okay to use words like black, Asian, white, and so on, as long as we're using it to describe someone and it's necessary. You can also use mixed race or dual heritage, but it's not okay to call someone coloured or half-caste, for example. Those words are deeply offensive and outdated. Also, when it comes to the N-word, we all know that it is a disgusting and offensive word. In fact, it has been described as the filthiest word in the English language. Therefore, no one should ever use that word in its full form, whether reading it in a book or singing along to it when listening to music in which it's contained, and so on. Yes, it is true that some black people have reclaimed that word and use it as a term of endearment or just use it within music and popular culture. That is their right, but it does not give anyone else who is not black the right to use that word or repeat it, even in the context which I mentioned. That word comes from the Spanish and Portuguese words for black and was used to describe the Africans who were taken as slaves to the US in 1619. That's when it was first used. Between the 1500s and the 1800s, over 12 million Africans were taken as slaves across the Atlantic by Europeans, and over 2 million of those slaves died on the slave ships. So the N-word is tied into the idea that African people were not seen to be human beings by Europeans for centuries and were treated like animals, and that is essentially what it was used for. So I would hope most people would understand why it is deeply offensive and problematic, because it is still used in that context now. We must also be aware of a term called microaggressions, and we must oppose microaggressions. Microaggressions are statements or behaviours which sometimes can seem subtle, but they have hidden meanings or imply that someone doesn't belong or is not welcome. For example, saying to a woman, "Why are you getting so emotional?" Or saying to a disabled person, "Come on, a hidden disability is not a real disability, is it?" Or saying to someone who's gay, "Oh, I have a cousin like you." Or saying to someone of colour, "Where are you really from?" and so on. Finally, we all have biases, some of which we know about, but others we're not even aware of, which are hidden in our subconscious. These hidden biases are referred to as unconscious biases, and every human being has them. Unconscious bias refers to our unintended people preferences formed by our socialization, our environment, and personal experiences, including exposure to certain stereotypes about people in society and in the media. These biases lead us to think, for example, that certain jobs, subjects, or sports are only for men and not for women, or vice versa. They may also lead us to believe in stereotypes about groups of people from different cultures, ethnicities, or religions, which of course is wrong because there are good and bad people in every group of people. These biases also lead us to prefer people who look like us, sound like us, and share our interests. So although there's nothing wrong with that, and biases are part of who we are, we must not let them affect the way we treat people and how we judge people, as this can lead us to behave in a discriminatory way. And this could ultimately land us in trouble, as it is against the law to discriminate against people based on certain protected characteristics. And these include person's race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, disability, and so on. I hope you found this message useful and it has given you plenty to think about and to discuss with your friends, teachers, and family members. We should not worry about discussing these really important issues, because it is only by discussing these issues can we learn and develop our own understanding of other people and the issues that they go through. Remember, there are around 8 billion people on the planet, but we are all unique. We are all special and have the right to be treated with respect, dignity, and equality. Also, remember that we all have the power to speak out against injustice and influence change to make the world a better place. Thank you for listening.